Though it was necessary, the 6-month hospitalization was quite tough. My strength has completely declined. I want to settle back into my own home soon. However, when I returned home with my husband, there was a huge amount of luggage from my mother-in-law and sister-in-law. What is this? What does this mean? My husband protested strongly. The luggage of my mother-in-law and sister-in-law was only to be kept temporarily. I was told everything would be moved out before I was discharged from the hospital. This is my house. The sick should leave. Unbelievable. This is not what we agreed on. Seeing me astonished, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law burst into laughter. My husband and I were utterly dismayed. I can't stand this kind of relationship anymore. My husband seemed to feel the same. You can tell by his face. We nodded to each other. Let's leave. Yes, let's. Enough of feeling terrible. I can't deal with the selfishness of my mother-in-law and sister-in-law anymore. My husband and I decided to implement a plan we had been warming up to for some time. My name is Emma. I'm 31 years old. I work as an office employee at a company that manufactures surveying equipment. I married Ted after 2 years of workplace romance at the age of 30. Both my work and married life are going well, and I am living very fulfilling days. But, of course, there are things I dislike. It's about my relationship with my mother-in-law and sister-in-law duo. Both have incredibly bad personalities. It's hard to believe that they are related by blood to my husband. Because of my mother-in-law and sister-in-law, I had to go through a lot of hardships. Today, I would like to talk in detail about those times. After getting married, my husband and I were entrusted with managing a house by my maternal uncle. My uncle has no spouse or children. Moreover, he is elderly and lives in a facility. Since the house would be empty, he suggested and allowed us to inherit it. It's an old house but good because it has many rooms. The problem is, it's not too far from my in-laws' house. It's about a 30-minute drive away. In the same city and relatively close, I was called to my in-laws' house every weekend. At first, I thought it was inevitable. It seemed like a rite of passage, as if they were treating me as part of the family. Eventually, I hoped they would leave me alone. But it was different. Diane, my mother-in-law, started treating me like a pair of legs or a wallet, calling me out every time I had a day off. Sorry, Emma. I have a bad back, so I can't move around freely. No, I'm fine. What else could I have done but reply like that? I want to go to the hospital. I want to go to the supermarket. I forgot my wallet. This month is tough. I drove the car as asked and paid up front at various stores as required. Eventually, my mother-in-law began to take my dedication for granted and became arrogant. Whenever I protested or pushed back a little, she would start acting like she was the victim. What's the matter, getting all pouty just because I called you over? You're a daughter-in-law, so it's natural for you to serve your mother-in-law. Didn't you understand that when you married into this family? I told you I had plans this week. It's terrible to call me despite that. If you didn't like it, you should have said no. Since you came, it must not have been an important matter, right? Even if it's just by marriage, I'm still a parent and you should prioritize me. My mother-in-law became increasingly presumptuous towards me. She had me clean their house and make lunch. Other tasks included replacing the sliding doors, weeding the garden, and cleaning the gutters. She claims to have a bad back, but whether that's true or not, I don't know. I wouldn't have been surprised if it was just an excuse to exploit me. There's something I still remember well from my interactions with my mother-in-law. It happened when that insect appeared in the kitchen. Like me, my mother-in-law hates that insect. Upon seeing it, she would scream like a little girl and jump back nearly 30 feet. That time was no different. An insect. As soon as I said it, my mother-in-law screamed and bolted from the kitchen. Do something quick. Get rid of it. Unbelievable. It's all your fault, Emma. What? My fault. How does that make sense? Of course it is. It's because you don't clean our kitchen properly that such insects appear. Just deal with it and make sure it doesn't escape to my side. I couldn't help but sigh. Isn't my mother-in-law, who lives here every day, responsible at all? It's incredible that she could blame me, who is only in this house on weekends. It wasn't just my mother-in-law who was unreasonable. Her daughter Cindy, who lives with her, was just as terrible. Cindy is a divorcee who was cheated on by her husband and returned from her marital home about 3 years ago. She loves cigarettes, gambling, and alcohol, much like a middle-aged man in a woman's skin. She always seems irritable, and I hated dealing with her. Especially troublesome was how she turned even more unpleasant and violent when drunk. Throwing things and rampaging, Cindy was a constant source of trouble for those around her. Apparently, she harbors a deep dissatisfaction with being divorced. She tries to drown her stress in alcohol. Truly bad quality. On weekends when my husband Ted was away on business trips, I often received calls from my mother-in-law about Cindy. Emma, Cindy just called from a bar. Can you pick her up? Me. Can't she take a taxi home? She says she's out of money. And she seems to have caused trouble at the bar too. When I reluctantly went to the bar, I found Cindy passed out drunk. When I told the staff that I was Cindy's relative, they all made troubled, stern faces. Drunk Cindy had broken plates and glasses, ruined the food, and disturbed other customers. Apparently, she had driven all the customers away that day. Not only did she reduce the day's earnings, but she also damaged the bar's equipment and furnishings. Later, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law were shocked by the high amount of compensation demanded. It wasn't just once or twice that I had to pick her up from the police station. I became familiar with several police officers in the community division due to Cindy-related troubles. The list of embarrassing episodes involving Cindy is endless. She was truly a nuisance. When my mother-in-law and sister-in-law get together, the trouble increases twofold or even threefold. In my husband's absence, they started to nag and complain constantly about me. Both became accustomed to the relationship and displayed their lazy true nature more openly. There's a saying, familiarity breeds contempt. But my mother-in-law and sister-in-law don't care about that at all. My husband also seemed distressed, being manipulated and mistreated by his mother and sister. Hey, Ted, can you lend me about $1,000? What? Money again? And $1,000. What do you need it for? We're taking Mom to a spa. You're her son, do you have a problem with that? Ted, are you okay with your mother's back not getting better forever? My mother-in-law and sister-in-law often demanded money from my husband. Their excuse was to fund trips to spa resorts under the guise of treating my mother-in-law's back. They really enjoyed themselves. While my husband and I are too busy with work to even think about vacations. The non-working mother-in-law and sister-in-law had a far better time. I really can't accept that. During weekdays, I managed my busy work, and on weekends, I was chased by the need to care for my mother-in-law and sister-in-law. This daily routine seemed to put a significant burden on my mind and body. Unbeknownst to me, my physical and mental health were deteriorating. I can't seem to shake off the tiredness even after sleeping. And I always feel melancholic, finding no joy in anything I do. Even when it should be relaxing to be alone with my husband, all I did was sigh. It's not about my mom, but maybe Emma, you should consider some kind of retreat too. Maybe so. This is the first time I've felt so tired. We need to do something about it. Both my husband and I want to have children someday. I'm about to turn 32. Ideally, I'd like to have my first child in my early 30s. For that reason, I want to be in perfect health and free from mental stress. It was a Friday night when I was suddenly struck by dizziness. At the same time, intense pain came. It felt like my head was splitting open. I couldn't stand anymore and crouched down, alerting my husband to the abnormality. It was terrifying. I realized that I couldn't articulate my words properly. My husband turned pale. Don't move, just wait. I'm calling an ambulance right now. I was taken to the emergency hospital, and after being examined, I was diagnosed with a cerebrovascular disorder. At the age of 30, I had a stroke. It was a situation where I could have lost my life if anything had gone slightly wrong. Naturally, I was immediately admitted to the hospital. It was fortunate that I was with my husband and able to get to a hospital quickly. I don't smoke or drink alcohol. I have no issues with high blood pressure or high cholesterol. So why did I have a stroke? The doctor who examined me said that the exact cause was not clear. Maybe it's because of my mom and sister. They've always been stressing Emma out. I'm sorry, but I thought so too. It's also my fault for always putting up with it. Anyway, it's good that I received treatment immediately. I need to recover as soon as possible. My long hospital stay began. Among the various diseases people get, cerebrovascular disease tends to require a long hospitalization. In my case, symptoms of depression were also observed, which made the period even longer. I'll never forget when my mother-in-law and sister-in-law came to visit. Despite my husband telling them not to, they came and spouted all sorts of nonsense. You collapsed, huh? Hurry up and come back home. We're in trouble here. Right? There's so much I want you to do, like washing up and cleaning. Honestly, I'd rather be the one in the hospital. Look, my back hurts, right? Hurry up and get better and come back home. Oh, and we'll be borrowing your room for a while, okay? Borrowing a room? What does that mean? After a while, my husband arrived. He was very angry when he saw his mother and sister. Hey. I told you to stop. Why are you here visiting Emma? Chill out. It's just a visit, naturally. We're family, after all. More importantly, make sure to tell Emma about that story, okay?
Bye.
My mother-in-law and sister-in-law quickly left. My husband apologized, unable to stop them, feeling sorry. Really, the selfish actions of my mother-in-law and sister-in-law are appalling. When asked what that story was about, it turned out to be about renovations at the family home. Remember that really windy day recently? Our family home is old, so roof tiles were blown away, and things hitting the house caused damage. And now there's a serious leak. It seems they decided to have some repairs done by a professional. During that time, they absolutely needed to move some items elsewhere. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law had asked to use our home for that purpose. I see. I don't mind. I'll be in the hospital for a while anyway. That helps a lot. Thanks. I'll make sure everything is cleared out before Emma is discharged. However, after 6 months of hospitalization, when I returned home, there was a huge amount of luggage there. It all appeared to be belongings of my mother-in-law and sister-in-law. My husband, who was with me, was also surprised. Weren't they supposed to have cleared everything out before I returned? What's going on? What is this? What does this mean? This wasn't here this morning. I had the movers bring it in during the afternoon. It's fine, right? The house is big. Exactly. Our house was quite old, and actually, it was a rental. So we've moved out. There's nowhere else to go, so trying to kick us out now would be pointless. What a troublesome mother-in-law and sister-in-law. They cut off their own escape and then impose themselves on us. Such manipulative behavior is unacceptable. My husband protested strongly against them. Yet, both my mother-in-law and sister-in-law acted as if they didn't hear a thing. When it came to arguing, unbelievably, my mother-in-law started to get angry in reverse. This is my house now. If you don't like it, you should leave. Exactly. Sick people should leave. It would be terrible if we got sick. Seeing me stunned, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law burst out laughing. Just hearing their laughter made me feel sick to my stomach. My husband was also worried about the recurrence of my illness. It was really, really hard. Half a month after my mother-in-law and sister-in-law started living with us, they got used to life and started talking about wanting to go on a trip again. They said they were tired from cleaning up after the move and wanted to heal by spa. So Ted, could you lend us about $1,000 again? What do you mean, lend? You've never paid back a single dollar. Stop fussing and just give it to us. It's the least you can do as filial piety, right? Pressured by his sister, my husband reluctantly handed over the money. Really, how terrible can a mother-in-law and sister-in-law be? They finished preparing that night and left early the next morning. Alone, my husband and I looked at each other and nodded. Let's leave. Yes, let's. Actually, ever since we started living together, my husband and I had been waiting for this moment. We waited for the moment when my mother-in-law and sister-in-law would go on a trip and leave the house empty. From there, we moved quickly. We packed our belongings and contacted the movers. As planned, we also contacted a real estate agency and said our farewells to the house we had grown accustomed to. 3 days later, my sister-in-law called my cell phone. She was agitated. I could hear my mother-in-law's shrieking voice in the background. It's not surprising. Just a few days before, the house they had lived in was put up for sale. What's going on? Explain yourself. Why can't we get into the house? What did you do with our belongings? Explain properly. I'm sorry for not notifying you. That house has been sold. What? Sold? You can't just do whatever you want. Who do you think you are? There's no reason they should be saying this. That house was in my name. What I do with it should be my choice. To think they just imposed themselves and now act like this. Neither my husband nor I had any intention of giving in to my mother-in-law and sister-in-law. With all due respect, the reason I ended up doing this is because of you and your mother. I didn't want to sell the house, but you gave me no choice. Wait a minute. What do you mean by that? Are you saying it's our fault? Yes, that's what I'm saying. The stress from you and your mother might have even caused my illness. It's only natural I'd want to distance myself, right? Don't be ridiculous. The illness has nothing to do with this. Who can truly say it's unrelated? At least, it's certain that the stress from my mother-in-law and sister-in-law caused me a lot of pain. My sister-in-law was still ranting on the phone. She demanded to know immediately where the belongings were. The house is empty. Our belongings should be there. Where did you put them? Are you trying to get sued? Your belongings are stored in a rental warehouse. Would you like them back? Of course. What are you thinking? Then there's a condition. Please leave us alone from now on. If you promise not to interfere with us at all in the future, I'll tell you where the belongings are. I've had enough of being called upon and asked for money. From now on, I want to live separately and have as little contact as possible. It was my mother-in-law, Diane, who had taken over the phone from my sister-in-law, Cindy, and laughed off my suggestion. Don't be ridiculous. I'm your mother. We can't just sever ties. That's exactly the unbreakable tie we're talking about severing. I then handed the phone to my husband. He had a lot he wanted to say to his mother and sister too. His face was unusually fierce, and his strong determination was reflected in his choice of words. Mom and Cindy, you've gone too far. You lied to me and even moved houses. Since that day, I've been furious, so furious I never want to see your faces again. Hey, Ted. There's no need to shout like that. Ted, don't get cocky just because you're the younger brother. You're the one who should stop being cocky, you unemployed divorcee. Who do you think paid for your trip this time? I'm not giving you any more money, ever. My husband was shouting furiously. His expression was intense. It seemed that even my mother-in-law and sister-in-law realized they had gone too far this time. Let's calm down and talk, they suggested from the other end. They wanted to know more about the location of the storage unit and how to get their belongings. Just as planned. My husband and I looked at each other and nodded, agreeing to set a time and place to meet my mother-in-law and sister-in-law. 3 days later, my husband and I called my mother-in-law and sister-in-law to a small cafe. They had been staying at a hotel for the past few days. Both looked visibly frustrated. They probably thought they could continue to dominate us with their usual assertive attitudes. We came. Now tell us quickly where the storage unit is. And we'll be billing you for our hotel stay. Don't joke. If you're going to say that, pay back the travel expenses I loaned you first. I must have lent you close to $5,000 in total by now. Pay up. My husband's presence was formidable. He seemed like a completely different person from the gentleman he used to be. It seemed they realized they couldn't make him any angrier. Both my mother-in-law and sister-in-law quickly changed their tone and started laughing nervously. Wait a minute. We didn't mean to make you angry. Just that, you know, Mom and I were just surprised by all this sudden news and got a bit irritated. Exactly. Let's talk properly. Don't talk about cutting ties. No, it's not okay. This concerns our future as a couple. We're severing ties with you here. Wait. How can you speak to your parent like that? Although his expression was stern, my husband didn't want to say these things. It was my mother-in-law and sister-in-law who made him say them. They are responsible for making him make this decision. I took over from my husband and reiterated our conditions to my mother-in-law and sister-in-law. As I mentioned before, please promise us that you will not contact us in the future. Do not call us. Do not ask for money. If you can promise that, I will tell you where the storage unit is. And you'll be paying the rental fee for the storage unit. Don't forget to repay the travel expenses. What? Don't say such unreasonable things. Do you think we have that kind of money?
Yeah.
Do you understand? Both Mom and I are unemployed. How can they be so defiant at this point? Do these two not know shame? If it were me, I couldn't say such things so boldly. Even my husband seemed shocked. The anger in his eyes towards my mother-in-law and sister-in-law faded. How irredeemable. Aren't you ashamed of what you're saying? You two are like parasites. Become more independent. Don't rely on us. Live by your own means. It's natural for children to help their parents. Calling us parasites is rude. Of course it's natural. Helping parents is normal and natural. I've always done that. But there's a limit to everything, and Mom and Cindy, neither of you have made the effort you could. And you've lied too, haven't you? An insect. It was the moment I suddenly pointed at my mother-in-law's feet. My mother-in-law stood up quickly from her chair and moved away to the wall. Such agile movement. It was not something someone with a bad back could do. It seemed she realized my
Ah.
an insect was a lie. My mother-in-law turned bright red. You liar. You tricked me. I'm sorry. But isn't it the same for both of us? You lied about having a bad back to make me come over and do housework and repairs, right? And you made me pay for your spa trips by saying you were going for treatments, didn't you? Weren't those supposed to be because of your bad back? Who's the real liar here? Cut it out. My mother-in-law had no comeback. She bit her lip in frustration and glared at the floor. Ted motioned for my mother-in-law to sit back down, and she returned to her seat, muttering. She seemed completely subdued and no longer intending to retaliate. Meanwhile, my sister-in-law still seemed ready to fight. Her eyes were bloodshot with anger as she looked at us. Both of you, it seems you have no respect for your elders. Taking away our belongings, tricking us with lies, calling us parasites. I'm really upset. We didn't want to do or say things this way either. Like I said before, you two are the ones who pushed us to this point. You need to understand that. We have another request. Please, Diane and Cindy, get jobs. Please manage your own lives by yourselves. You can do that, right? Both of you are healthy, with no serious illnesses. You have time. And you owe me money. If you don't want to be called parasites, there's no reason not to work. My sister-in-law, glaring at us with a frustrated look. We're only stating the truth, yet it seems she can't accept it. It appears we alone are not enough to teach her a lesson. But there's no need to panic. This was expected. I signaled to a man at the back of the cafe. He stood and approached us. My sister-in-law turned pale when she saw him. It was Kevin, my sister-in-law's ex-husband. Actually, my husband and I had contacted Kevin to come today. His eyes were cold, clearly showing he no longer had any love for my sister-in-law. It's been a while, Cindy. As usual, I'm appalled. Kevin. Why are you here? Did they call you? What do you mean, as usual? As usual, you seem to be living your life lying to everyone around you. You deceived me, and you've been deceiving Ted and Emma too, right? You cheat. Wait. Was it actually you, Cindy, who cheated? I had heard that my sister-in-law's marriage ended because her husband cheated. However, given that my sister-in-law did not deny Kevin's words, it seems they were true. My sister-in-law had been lying to us. The cause of the divorce was my sister-in-law's cheating. She is vain, arrogant, dishonest, and unfaithful. I disliked her even more now. If you had stayed quiet back home, I would have stopped fussing over this. But Cindy, it seems you're still hurting people around here. So what? That's none of your business. It's not entirely unrelated. I'm your ex-husband. If I had been stricter with you, maybe Ted and Emma wouldn't have had to suffer. What? What exactly are you trying to say? Make it clear. At that moment, Kevin pulled a document from his pocket and slammed it on the table. My sister-in-law turned pale. The paper read, "Demand for payment of damages for infidelity." It also stated a demand for $30,000 in damages to be paid within 1 week. That's impossible, my sister-in-law shook her head. $30,000 is impossible. I can't pay that. Didn't I just tell you? I'm unemployed, I have no savings, only debts. So what? If you don't have money, work for it. Work hard and pay back the money. That's the only way you can make amends. Let me remind you, the damages are to be paid in full. But I'm telling you it's impossible. Mom, don't just sit there, say something. What am I supposed to say? It's your fault for cheating. Don't drag your mother into this. Pay back the damages with the money you earn from working. The infighting has finally started. How ugly it is. Watching my mother-in-law and sister-in-law is just repulsive. These people need to suffer thoroughly. I'm sure they won't reflect on their actions otherwise. I presented a medical diagnosis in front of my mother-in-law and sister-in-law. Here is a diagnosis I got from the hospital. Based on this, I will sue you both. What? Sue us. Stop talking nonsense. Why would you sue us? Didn't I tell you? I might have gotten sick because of the stress you two caused me. That could be considered assault, you know? The mention of a specific crime shocked both my mother-in-law and sister-in-law. If convicted, they could face up to 15 years in prison or a fine of up to $5,000. Hearing about the possible legal penalties made my mother-in-law and sister-in-law visibly tremble. Now understanding they might be sued, they both started panicking. Their previous bravado was gone. They huddled together, shaking. It seemed they no longer had the spirit to argue or protest. In front of the subdued faces of my mother-in-law and sister-in-law, I spread another document. What? This is. It's a pledge I've prepared. I need you, Diane and Cindy, to swear to abide by what's written here. If you break this promise, I will really sue you, okay? I included everything in the pledge. Never to summon me to act as a maid again. No matter how hard their lives might become, they must not ask Ted for money. I included clauses about working to support themselves and repaying the money they owe. I also specifically noted that my sister-in-law must pay Kevin the agreed compensation in full. After reading through the pledge, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law started shaking their heads in a near tearful state. Are you demons? How can you expect us to keep such promises? Paying the compensation in full is absolutely impossible. I would have to go into debt. Then go into debt. And then work hard to pay it back. You've been messing around up till now, so it's time to start working seriously. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law felt completely ostracized by us. Having given up on resisting, they slumped down in defeat. Seeing them like this, I finally felt a sense of relief. It seems that my mother-in-law and sister-in-law later tried many jobs. Building cleaning, traffic control on construction sites, picking orders in logistics warehouses. It appears they registered with an agency that arranges day labor. They are not holding permanent jobs, probably because they failed to pass interviews. After all, my mother-in-law is quite old at 65. And sister-in-law appears to be a difficult woman to handle. It's natural that no company wants to hire them. They will probably continue to live by earning day-to-day wages from temporary jobs. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law had to take out loans to pay off their debts. And the compensation. The loan sharks were the only ones willing to lend to these two who lack financial skills. If they fail to make payments, they will surely face severe consequences. It's natural that my mother-in-law and sister-in-law are desperately working. I once saw my sister-in-law working at a construction site in the city. Dressed in a uniform and wearing a helmet, she was directing traffic. When our eyes met, she bit her lip in frustration and looked away. She should be proud to be working hard, but she's really quite a strange person. I have also seen my mother-in-law. She was stocking shelves at a supermarket. She was being scolded by a much younger coworker and looked incredibly frustrated. Both have such terrible personalities that they are likely to mess up eventually. They'll be disliked by their coworkers, unable to stay at a job, and will have to look for another. They should continue wandering from place to place, filled with regret. Right now, all I want for those two is just that. Later, Ted and I are living a very normal, happy life. We no longer have any interference from my mother-in-law and sister-in-law. Just that has made me feel much more relaxed, and my health has improved. Perhaps because of this, I have been able to get pregnant with our first child. Currently, I am on maternity leave, spending peaceful days with my unborn daughter. The baby is a girl. My goal now is to give birth to this child and raise her to be a fine woman. I suppose I will eventually tell her about my mother-in-law and sister-in-law as examples of what not to become. Despite the difficult years they caused me, things will be different from now on. Together with Ted and our child, I am sure we will live a happy life.